All right, what's going on, everybody? It's Talladega Spring Race. As always, thank you guys, as always, for tuning into all of our videos. If you want to help grow the channel, the best way to do that is liking, commenting, sharing, and ultimately just subscribing. So that really was what is going to help us out the most. But if you want to help us out in other ways, another way too is if you are feeling generous, you can always throw us some tips if you do have a good weekend there. But as far as the race preview and initial thoughts go. So this has kind of been an interesting thing that we've been looking at, having a couple of discussions on leading into this weekend is, okay, it's just another Talladega weekend. You're just going to, quote, stack the back, which I think you should still do. And we'll get to that today. So when you get to these slates, it's really focusing more about place differential, upside, and finishing potential than, dominator points. Like, don't really want to focus too much on dominator points. I mean, if you get lucky and it turns into a single file, freight train out there and you get the driver who's leading a bunch of laps and they finish well, it's kind of just icing on the cake. But even if the driver leads, 40, 50 laps and wrecks out and finishes like 28th or something, it's still going to hurt your line. So these super speedway races are kind of, I don't want to say random. I would say it's definitely harder to predict, who's going to run well. I think you can predict more of the type of race that we're going to see. So anytime we get to these super speedway races, I generally tend to just try to focus more on place differential upside. And that's usually coming from drivers who usually start, 20th on back, who are in good equipment, who we know are going to meet with the lead pack and who have the ability to actually finish inside the top 10. When we say stack the back, especially at this race, it doesn't always just mean jam in the driver that starts 38, 37, 36, 35th and like build your line that way. Like historically speaking, the spring race doesn't see a ton of wrecks. It's usually on the lower side if you compare all the super speedway races that we go to, but really only takes one wreck. We saw the Xfinity race turn into a complete wreck fest. So you never know what you're going to get. And even if it doesn't turn into a wreck fest, it's still pack racing. So you're still going to want to focus on guys who give you place differential upside. So regardless if you think this race goes green or turns into a wreck fest, I think the main focus either way is just get those high place differential, upside plays into your line, and you should have a pretty good day. So who are some of those plays? Well, if you look at the slate, you're going to see a variety of different interest levels here, but you got Logano, Blaney, and Elliott up top here. Arguably, Logano and Blaney are going to be the two best super speedway racers. Maybe Hamlin, you can be thrown in that mix as well. And I would argue they're all great drivers who are probably going to lead laps, who are going to be up front. The problem is they look at where they start. Logano starts 8th, Blaney starts 5th, Hamlin starts 1st. And people know that these are good super speedway racers, so their ownership is going to be pretty high. I wouldn't be surprised if we see like anywhere from, I don't know, maybe 18, 22, 25% ownership, on some of these plays. And yeah, they should do well, but the whole name of the game is trying to get these place differential, upside drivers into our line. They just don't really give you that. So, even if Logano starts 8th, finishes 6th, like, yeah, it's going to be a great day for him. I'd rather take, maybe William Byron, for example, starts 18th and maybe he can finish 8th, then I give those extra place differential. Like you just are getting safer plays in your lines that have a higher probability of cashing when you are playing some of these drivers that have high interest levels. Now it's all fun and games to take risks trying to hit the optimal lineup, but your chances of hitting the optimal lineup, like getting lucky with whoever the 6 drivers are going to work out, is very slim. I'd much rather just focus on plays who I think are going to cash for me and just walk away with a profitable weekend. So Chase Elliott's going to be one of those drivers for me. He's going to be extremely popular, great equipment, starts way back in the back half of the field. A lot of people are going to be on Elliott, so a lot of lines are going to start with Elliott, but for good reason. Like I said, Hamlin, same argument as Logano and Blaney, just not really going to get there. I do like William Byron, 18th is kind of where I kind of make the cutoff point, just depending on kind of who the equipment is. So really anyone 18th on back, I'm going to have high interest on for the most part. There's some exceptions. And then anyone kind of 18th to 10th, or 11th, I would say is kind of medium interest. And then 10th to 1st is pretty much low, almost none, no interest level for me. So like Byron, more just looking at the starting position, necessarily who the driver is or the salary. Like salary doesn't really matter. So I'm not really going to get to Larson, more of a tournament play. I really like Ross Chastain and Brad Keselowski. If you guys saw, I picked Brad Keselowski to win on the Daily Fantasy Racing channel that Ryan Larkin has. So double down, pick Larkin pick Keselowski in my snake draft too. So I'm hoping he has a good day. So felt like I had to put high interest level for them there. But in all honesty, being serious, I do think he's going to have a good DFS day starting 20th. Reddick and Kyle Busch and Wallace are probably more GPP options just based off of where they start. Between all of them, I probably would pick Kyle Busch up 3 just because of, again, where he starts. Toyota showed some really good speed in qualifying, but I'm curious to see how they're going to run in the pack. So not really going to get to Bell or Truex today. I mean, if you're doing 150 lines, the mini max, for example, and you're just trying to get aggressive and trying to hit the optimal, yeah, I can understand sprinkling some ownership on these drivers. But, if you're playing cash games, I would not recommend playing a Bell or Truex. I like Alex Bowman a lot. Bowman's pretty much the same play as Chase Elliott. He's just $2,000 cheaper. And Bowman probably is going to carry less ownership than Chase Elliott as well. So if you're looking for a potential pivot play, off of Chase Elliott, I would look at Byron, look at Chastain, look at Keselowski, and really, I think the best 1-for-1 type of pivot you could make is Bowman. But depending on the way that people build, I would imagine Bowman and Elliott are probably going to be in a lot of lines. But I just seeing the way that people build when they open up their phone and on the DraftKings app, I'm going to imagine that a lot of people are putting Chase Elliott in their first, driver selection spot. Stenhouse will be super popular. The Daytona 500 champ usually runs pretty well on these tracks, starts 33rd. Briscoe is going to be hard to get to. Maybe if you're doing 150 lines, trying to get aggressive, but otherwise, I don't think he should really be in your line. Carries a lot of more downside than he does upside. Harvick should be pretty low owned, maybe another aggressive tournament play. Same thing for Butcher. Suarez is going to be high interest for us. Might not carry as much ownership as some of the other drivers who start deeper in the field, but I like Suarez in the event that if A, it turns into a wreck fest, I think he can score well. And B, if it doesn't turn into a wreck fest, he still gives you that place differential upside with the equipment and the ability to finish well. And that could be said, with basically any of these drivers that have high interest. Really, the only time that I think you want to try to get super aggressive with some of these punt plays, at the very bottom, would be the Daytona 500, for example. We usually see that be just a complete chaotic race. We usually see the cutoff, the summer Daytona race, before the playoffs start. That one's usually pretty chaotic. Sometimes the Talladega playoff race is pretty chaotic, but this Talladega spring race, don't always see a ton of wrecks, cautions. And my fear with a lot of these back marker cars are just going to ride around in the back. So the only way that these drivers score well is if we get a lot of wrecks and they can finish, inside the top 20, inside the top 15. If we don't get a complete wreck fest, there's no way in hell these drivers are going to finish that well. So when we say stack the back, it's more of stacked, drivers 20th through 38th, basically. But drivers who have the ability and the equipment to actually finish well. So just be mindful a little bit there. I don't even know where we were at here. Suarez, maybe? Yeah. So Almirola, again, starts too close to the front of the field. I think Priest, Dillon, and Cindric are basically the same play. I think they're fine for cash games. More tournament plays, though, should be relatively lower owned. For me, I would lean on Priest and Cindric just because they're in Fords. Fords usually tend to run pretty well at Talladega, and they just have some additional teammates that are actually on their team. I know, Dylan will get hooked up with the other Chevy drivers. But if we get a clean race, you're going to need that teammate help to make sure you have some drafting support out there, especially with these next gen cars. It's really easy to lose the draft. So the more support you can have, the better. The more confident I would feel rostering a driver. So that's why I would lean on Reese and Cindric between the three of them there. Really like McDowell. Don't know how much ownership he's going to get. Front row has 3 entries this week, so it's again another just drafting partner for him. Usually runs pretty well on these track types. You saw him win the Daytona 500. It always just seems to be in the mix at the end, so I really like him. Jones I like as well. Jones is just having a terrible year, not getting the finishes, slow, not running well. If there is ever a week for him to turn it around, it's going to be these super speedway races at Talladega. And people might see his poor finishes, and that might keep people off of him. So I think he makes for pretty good, cash games to play, but also, pretty nice tournament play too. Not really going to get the Gibbs, just starts too close to the front. Justin Haley, kind of in the same boat as Eric Jones. Justin Haley usually kind of goes under the radar unless you're almost like forced to play him. So really like him just from an ownership standpoint. AJ Allmendinger, don't know, kind of starts right in the middle of the field. So you could kind of go, either way if you land on him. If you're doing a randomizer, I don't think you have to, swap him out. If you're doing, multiple lines, I think you should definitely get some ownership to him. LaJoie is going to be another really popular option. I would say LaJoie and Elliott are going to be, Elliott's going to be the popular expensive option. LaJoie's going to be the popular cheap option. I don't think salary really matters. I don't think you have to worry too much about, trying to max out the 50,000, or if your lineup comes in only at like 43,000 of the 50,000, you're leaving like 7,000 left over. That's okay. We don't always see you need to spend the max amount of money on these race weekends, but Joy's going to be popular. Austin Hill. So my fear with Austin Hill is if this race does go green, the equipment. I just don't know if he will be able to maintain with the lead pack. And if say it's a green race and then maybe they wreck like on the last lap and he's, 4 or 5 laps down at that point, he's not going to pass any car. So you kind of need a wreck fest for him to work out. I do, however, think St. Smith will be able to keep up with the lead pack. He starts 35th. Really nice pivot option for the Corey LaJoie chalk. But even if LaJoie busts, per se, your line isn't going to cash because of LaJoie. Like, if you played Austin Dillon, he wrecks out and gets you negative points. That's more of a reason you would not cash versus if you play LaJoie wrecks, maybe he still gives you positive 8 points, or maybe he gives you 0 points. Like, I'd much rather have a 0 or an 8 than roster a driver who starts maybe like 12th and wrecks out and finishes 38th, and then just giving me negative points. That's when you're going to get yourself in trouble. So don't be afraid if some of your drivers, wreck out. You can still easily cash with other drivers in your line wrecking out, because most likely other people are going to have those plays too. And as long as your plays are not getting massive negative points, you should still have a good opportunity to have a good day. So Burton, you just never feel good about rostering Burton. So maybe just more of a GPP play there. Really like Gregson, really like Gillen, and probably wouldn't go too much lower than that. I would maybe sprinkle some ownership into these punt plays, but for me, most of my lines, I think you're going to end with Gillen in there. So really, bulk of my lines are just going to be rotating, between all these high interest levels, that I have, and just getting multiple variations, multiple lines, and building that way. I think with all the drivers I have listed in high interest here, whether it turns into a wreck fest or whether it goes green, I think all of these plays can score well. So that's the approach that I'm taking. I'll be sprinkling in some medium, ownership levels as well. I'm not really going to get to the lows. So hopefully that was helpful. I know the super speedway weekends are pretty quick, pretty straightforward, but excited for the race. I'm really hoping it's not a single file follow the leader. I really hope it's side by side, pack race, and hopefully we do see, some cautions in this, and hopefully this place differential upside strategy will work out for us. So that'll do it. And I'll catch you guys next week at Dover. Actually, we'll be at the race in Dover next weekend for Saturday and Sunday. So if you guys are going, let me know. I'd love to meet up with you guys as well. So yeah, have a good one.